Hello, today I wanted to do a quick vlog about a horror challenge that had been going on Instagram a couple of months ago. So I'll actually be pulling my answers up from my iPod as I go because all of my answers had been done via Instagram, and I just figured I would just do a full vlog about it after everything had been answered. So I'm not really too sure how long ago this had been. I believe it was sometime the Horror Fanatic challenge. It was started by a girl called Lizzie is Twisted, but via some conversations I had had with Dr. Haslin, or Hasline, I'm not sure how he pronounces that, so no offense intended, but he said it had been started, I believe, about 2 years ago by someone called Tattoo Dordman on YouTube. So I figured I would just give credit to both persons before starting, just to be fair, because I haven't been around that long. I've been vlogging for about 2 years off and on, so I really don't know too many people, so I really didn't know that it originally started as a 30-day video challenge. I had only seen it as this this Instagram game that recently started, and there's been a lot more others going on. I'm not too sure if I want to keep up with them because they really are a lot to keep up with, and I usually just kind of just do a photo dump at the end because I really can't keep up with them. They're a lot of fun, they're just a lot of work. So as I go along, I'll go ahead and put up screen caps of the photos that I had used while posting from Instagram, so you'll actually see the exact same photos I had used. Instagram obviously is a lot different from YouTube, so everyone pretty much sometimes just used more than one answer, which was the norm over there. I believe on YouTube everyone only used one absolute answer, but once again, I only knew this off of Instagram, so I'm going off of those answers, so you might have more than one answer, you might even have some repeats, so just giving a quick background on that. But I will go ahead and get into this. And the day one question had been your first horror film. My first horror film was Troll. I don't remember how old I was when this was out. I think I was about... I honestly don't really remember. Yeah, it's been a while, but I remember the one of the scenes which I guess really kind of like ticked off my parents was it was one of the scenes where the troll just, it's a close-up scene where he sort of just jumps onto the screen, and my brother had sort of like lifted me up in front of the TV. We were sitting in front of the TV watching, and he just kind of like holds me up and he's like, "Look!" And the troll pops out and he's like, "Rah!" And I just started screaming. So of course my mom starts yelling, "Stop scaring your sister!" So that's my memory of Troll. My brother was always doing obnoxious stuff like that, but you know what are brothers for, right? Second question, or day two question, was last horror movie you saw in the theater. For this one I actually did use two answers because one I consider more of a dark drama than an actual horror, so I just went ahead and posted the last two movies I had seen, which were The Purge, and the one I saw before that was The Evil Dead. Both were excellent films. I really liked The Purge. It definitely gave me a lot to discuss and think about, and my boyfriend and I talked about it for hours after we got out of the theater. Day three's question was favorite classic horror. I went with Freaks. Once again, this is a film that I had learned about from my brother. He introduced me to a lot of horror films growing up. So, and our parents, or rather my parents, because he was already in college, so he didn't have restrictions. So, my parents growing up never really restricted what I was and wasn't allowed to watch, so that really wasn't an issue. I've heard a lot of people's backstories, people's vlogs on YouTube talking about their horror origins or how they got into horror, and that really wasn't an issue for me. It was something that I was always able to watch. My parents weren't in the way, and I've just always gravitated toward it, so just natural horror fan. So at one point I had been on a quest to find the most disturbing horror films. You know, I think every adolescent or, you know, horror fan at some point goes through this point to where they feel a need to challenge themselves and find the most disturbing things. And it wasn't necessarily disturbing in the sense that it's grotesque or vulgar, but I guess you would say upsetting, or I guess just something that just sort of gets under your skin type criteria that I was looking for. So One of the films that had been recommended to me by my brother was Freaks, and I had read about it in Stephen King's Dance Macabre, his docu-book that he had written. And it seemed very interesting. I really love the story. I think it's great storytelling, pace, everything. And the ending, which you know is coming, it's, you know, you come to expect something's going to happen, but I don't know, even though it's not too graphic or too shocking, it still sends sort of like a moment. You know, it really, it kind of surprises. Day 4's question was horror movie that you thought you'd love but hated instead. I went with Let's Scare Jessica to Death. I had always heard about it, and I know it has this great cult status, but I was bored. I mean, it really didn't do anything for me. The main character, yes, I know she has mental issues, but she's just so clingy and whiny, and I know that has a lot to do with the story and how it all ties in, but I don't know, I know it's a slow build type story. It's sort of like a retelling of, I believe, Carmilla. So I know it has some vampire referencing, but I don't know, it just really bored me. And I know every time I say I don't like this movie, I always get attacked because people are always like, you don't understand it, or you should just go back and watch it again. And they're very defensive about it. And these are my opinions. I'm not saying anything derogative about the movie, and it's not like I've insulted your wife. You don't have to attack me. Day 5's question was favorite horror remake. I went with the remake of Cat People. Absolutely fabulous film. I first saw this when I was about, once again, I just really don't remember. I know we had seen it on cable TV back when the USA Network was actually cool. Yeah, but I know I fell asleep in the middle of the movie, and I didn't see it again until years later on late night. Once again, USA Up All Night. They really showed really awesome stuff. I really missed that show. But it had announced that that was the next movie up, and I knew I'd seen it before, and I'd been wanting to watch it forever, so I grabbed a blank VHS and I made a bootleg of it, and I actually like the TV cut version better than the DVD release, because they cut out some of the draggy scenes, like where Irina's sightseeing, and then in the next scene she's in the taxi cab and the driver is offering to take her to the French Quarter instead of some other place she wants to go. I can't remember where. And she says, I've already been sightseeing, and I'm like, well, that's redundant. We don't need that because we just saw it, so she doesn't need to be talking about it. And if she's talking about it, then that scene should be out. But that's one of the things that kind of irked me a bit, I guess just because I was so used to the bootleg, and then years later I got the DVD version when I was in my early 20s, and I was just surprised by the cuts. But really fabulous film. I know they have like some bondage stuff going on. I'm not getting into that, but great soundtrack also. I love Giorgio Moroder's work on that, and I think he did a fabulous job. It really is a different take on the film. It definitely goes in a completely different direction, even though they do recreate certain scenes. But yeah, that's definitely one of the movies I can talk about forever, so let's just move on. Day 6, favorite vampire movie. I went with Interview with the Vampire. I absolutely love this movie. I love period pieces. I've always been into vampire lore, mythology. It's stuff I've always collected. And I don't know, I guess it's one of those phases that people go through as well, where people are just really into vampires. But I've also always loved reading. I was introduced to Anne Rice by my eldest sister. I had always, before then, only read Stephen King, so it definitely introduced new material. I read the majority of the books. I stopped when the spin-offs happened with the Vampire Monde and all of that, so I mean, I really didn't care about those. But yeah, I absolutely love the movie. I think it's very well told. I think it was also just very unique at the time because it presented vampires from a human perspective, the fact that they could actually feel remorse for the lifetime of things that they've done rather than just being these cruel, soulless creatures. So I don't know, at the time it was a new concept. I was very interesting, and like I said, I just really love that movie. Day 7, horror movie you think no one has seen. I went with Chopper Chicks and Zombie Town. That's not really one I hear too many people talk about. It's just, you know, one of those crazy, quirky movies. I believe it was Billy Bob Thornton's first starring role or first major film as well, so that definitely is also an interesting little bit of information. Day 8, favorite foreign horror. Once again, I went with The Vampire Diaries. This was Thirst. And I really love foreign film, Korean film, so Once again, I think it's just a very awesome story. It starts off as what you think is just a regular basic story and just goes off the deep end and just becomes very crazy and unpredictable. Day 9, favorite supernatural horror, I went with Poltergeist. I don't think I really need an explanation. It's just an all-around awesome film. Not too happy that it's being remade, but can't do anything about it, so I'll just, just see what I think when trailers and stuff start popping up. But yes, awesome film, definitely has held up very well. Day 10, horror movie everyone loves but you don't. VHS. That movie really pissed me off, especially the opening scene where the woman's attacked and her melons are basically exposed to a video camera. I don't know, that's not the only reason I hated it. I think a lot of the stories were just very flat, very dull. There were a couple of scenes here and there that just kind of did make me a bit uncomfortable, I guess you could say. They had the authentic horror film effect. But for the most part, I just really didn't like the movie. Day 11, favorite horror comedy movie, I went with Black Sheep. I thought it was fantastic. So many scenes just made me laugh. It's just very subtle humor. And the ecologist girl, which just yammers on about gibberish, and she's just very new agey. And I know to some degree the character was a stereotype, but I don't know, it was just a really fun movie. I also love the fact that they used puppets. Nowadays you just really don't see puppets, and honestly, I have a thing about puppets, so usually if it's a movie with a puppet, I like. Most disturbing horror film? This one isn't necessarily a horror film. I'd say it's more of a dark drama, but it's so unsettling that I guess in some situations it could be considered a horror. So I went with the Korean film by Kim Ki-duk, Bad Guy, and it's basically about a guy who's shunned by this high society girl, and he makes it a point to just put her in her place and prove that he's not too good for her. So he lowers her to his level by turning her into a prostitute. And I really won't tell you too much more about the story, but obviously there are a lot of rape scenes, and I think the effect is same male as well as female, that it's disturbing to see, especially because you can see how upset she is throughout the film. And so many times during the movie I just really, really wanted to turn it off. I was disgusted with it. I didn't want anything more to do with it, but I was compelled to find out how it ended. I wanted to know what was going to happen. Is she going to get out? How is she going to make it out of there? So that's definitely very good storytelling. If it's something that disturbs you, that you want nothing to do with, but you just have to finish it. So I think it's an awesome movie. It's very difficult to watch, but it's definitely well worth it. Favorite zombie film? I went with Lucio Fulci's Zombie. That's actually the first foreign film I was introduced to, once again by my brother. And very awesome movie. It does have a slow pace, but I mean, when you're a kid, you really don't notice things like that. But the ending scene where they're just kind of trying to fend off the zombies, and they're just so slow moving, but the tension is just so great. I don't know, I just love everything about this. Favorite indie horror? I went with The Evil Dead, and it is one of my favorite film franchises. There are tons that I like, so I guess that was part of the challenge of this whole movie questionnaire, is the fact that it's very difficult to limit yourself within one bracket there. So yeah, definitely The Evil Dead. Favorite monster movie? Pumpkinhead. Absolutely fabulous. I remember seeing this in theater and being terrified, not wanting to see any more of what was going on. And I know at one point my mom covered my eyes. She's like, there, just stop looking if it bothers you. And then at some point I started just peeling her hands off my face because I wanted to know what was going on. As soon as I saw what was happening, I just duck right back under. So yeah, it's a very fun film. I don't really like the way the franchise went. They really didn't do it justice, but awesome monster. And the fact that it was based off of a children's poem, I think that's also just very cool in itself. Favorite movie with a great soundtrack? I wanted to say Lost Boys, but so many people were answering that I just wanted to go with something different. So I chose Queen of the Damned, which wasn't a very great movie, but awesome soundtrack. I also went with Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight. And, very awesome soundtracks. I still listen to them on a regular basis. Favorite 80s horror? Duh, The Lost Boys. There's so many films to choose from though, but for me growing up, that was the definitive 80s movie. My sister and I would literally act out scenes from this and quote it back and forth to each other. And I remember when the DVD first came out, we just kind of went on a frenzy and we started quoting things from memory. So yeah, we every now and again still do it. Favorite black and white movie? White Zombie. Excellent storytelling. I really love this one, and I don't know, it's I think Bela Lugosi is great, and I pretty much just love just about everything that he's in. Best use of gore? I chose Hellraiser. I think, well, for me growing up, that was the goriest film I had ever seen, and I've never really seen anything on that degree. They definitely have this whole sick combination of S&M, bondage, torture, and I guess you could say to some degree it was the predecessor to all these torture porn movies that are going on nowadays. But yeah, definitely Hellraiser. Favorite horror character? Freddy Krueger. He's been a staple in my childhood growing up, and I've just always been a Freddy fan. And, you know, not too crazy about the remake, but I definitely think it's awesome that Robert Englund, has the distinction of being Freddy in every single movie, because in other film franchises, different people have played Jason Voorhees, different people have played Michael Myers, and Robert Englund was very consistent. He even played Freddy on the TV show. So I was kind of let down that he didn't come back and do the remake, but, you know, still awesome that he did the spin-off, the Freddy vs. Jason. So, yeah, very awesome of him to do that. Best horror franchise? Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, there's just so many different versions of Freddy. You have evil Freddy, you have goofy Freddy, you have scary Freddy, again, reinvented Freddy by Wes Craven. So he definitely has gone through a lot of changes, and he did suffer from, you know, back in the 80s, you know, the longer film franchise went on, the more stupid a movie became or a character became, but I've always going to stick with Freddy. Best death scene? I chose the eye gouging scene in Zombie. To me, it's still very realistic, and considering the fact that it's all practical effects, it's none of this CGI nonsense that is done nowadays, so definitely, you know, I definitely cringed the first time I saw this, and even years later after I got this on DVD, I still cringe when I see it. You know, just it's so slow, and the suspense, and you're expecting it, and you know it's coming, and it just happens so slowly, and then just finally at the end the eye just pops out. Great quote from a horror film? I actually went with a partial conversation on this because you wouldn't really understand the quote without the first half, but so I can pull this up really quick here. So this is one of the first interview scenes where Father Crass was speaking with Pazuzu. So the question he asks is, if you're the devil, why not make the straps disappear? Pazuzu responds, that's much too vulgar a display of power. And I don't know, I think if I were ever to ask a devil entity something like that and get that sort of response, you know, it's like, ooh, you know, that's kind of creepy, the fact that he refrains from parlor tricks and actually reserves his powers for something worthwhile. Horror movie character that describes you or that you relate to? I went with Angela Bettis in May. She's very much the underdog, but she's a very good person, very lovable, and I don't know, for some reason she just always seems to get walked on, but she gets her own in the end. And you know, the whole saying that nice guys finish last, I don't think it should have to be that way, and she definitely proves that she didn't finish last. I also love the fact that, you know, she has very dark humor, but she's just a very goofy person, and I don't know, I'd say that I'm somewhat like that. Favorite Christmas or holiday horror film? I really don't like Christmas movies. They're usually just yuck, but I did like Rare Exports. It's not like your traditional holiday movie. You know, you still do have somewhat of the evil Santa going on, but I don't know, I guess the fact that it was a horror film really lent and added some depth to it because it was coming from a whole different perspective. Horror movie for a chicken, or I guess what you would call a horror film recommendation for someone who doesn't watch horror films on a regular basis. I guess they're not as desensitized. So the two movies I chose were Edward Scissorhands and The Labyrinth. I figured if you're a total weenie, you should be fine with those movies. Guilty pleasure horror film, I went with Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. I know it's a really bad movie and the characters just do all these goofy things and there's such bad dialogue, but I don't know. I went through a period in time where I would watch this movie once a day, every day, and this went on for weeks, and I don't know, I just really still like this movie. I know it's not really the best one in the series, but who cares? It's a movie. Horror film you'd like to see remade? I went with Vamp. I know it's somewhat of a cult film. It's a fairly good film, but I think it's become dated. And I'd like to see an updated version. I'd like to actually see less of a campy comedy type version and just bring on the full-on horror. Maybe not along the lines of Dusk Till Dawn, but just take it in a very a hardcore, gruesome direction. Worst horror movie? I chose Hellraiser 2: Hellbound. I really hated this movie. I know I had started seeing it when I was a kid, and years ago I just finally just rented the movie and just finished watching it, and it wasn't what I expected. I just thought it was absolute garbage. I don't think it deserves to be part of the franchise. I know later direct-to-video versions were just as bad, if not worse, but I just really have it in for this movie. Your favorite all-time horror? It's very hard to limit myself to just one movie because I have a favorite film within each genre and subgenre, so I thought it was unfair to limit myself to one movie, so I'll go in order of discovery, which favorite horror film. My first favorite horror film was Pet Sematary. Absolutely love that film. Second is Interview with the Vampire, and lastly is Equus, not the Daniel Radcliffe version, the original. And this isn't an order of best to least. I don't believe in lists. I think they're garbage, but that's just the order that I discovered these films in, so that's the only reason I named them that way. But to me, they're just all on the same level as far as greatness. They're my absolute all-time favorites, so I don't think they're ever going to be replaced or changed or actually put into a numbers list. I just don't believe in that. You want my list of favorite smells? I can give you my top 5. The smell of rain, the smell of freshly cut grass. I love the smell of chocolate. I love the smell of coffee. I can't remember my 5th right now, but you get the gist. Things that I don't consider as important, I guess you could say. So yeah, there's my condensed version of the 30-day horror challenge, or the horror fanatic challenge, just depending what name you may know this by. But yeah, hope you enjoyed my answers, and who knows, maybe I might do another one of these